Sometimes you just forget to go live. Happens to the best of us. Happens to the rest of us. Anyways, good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are. I already yapped for like 4 minutes before I realized that I only clicked the go live button once, but I do need to click it twice. This is and will be the second day of research for the mainline series videos, aka the most interesting commander series, where we talk about Simic. 9 commanders last time, probably 9 commanders this time. We started off last stream talking about Adrix and Neff because they're first in the alphabet. A commander that is pretty much parallel lives on a stick, aka it doubles the amount of tokens that you're getting. The way we approach this commander is by either creating mass tokens with stuff like Clone Legion, or by creating high value tokens. Let's say by making copies of things, or by creating just tokens that scale well with each other. So for example, by Waste Blob, you create a copy every upkeep if you control a commander. But of course, if you have Edrix and Neff, that means you create 2 copies instead. Next was Alaundo. Alaundo is almost a suspend commander, but not quite. You exile stuff from your hand with time counters equal to the mana value of those cards. And then you remove a time counter from each other card you own in exile. It was a bit of a tough nut to crack because, well, it's not suspend. So it doesn't tick down every turn. So you can't really go for super large stuff like Omniscience because, well, waiting at least 5 turns for your Omniscience still isn't all that good. What we then tried to do is pair it with a bunch of untapped stuff. So Freed from the Real, for 1 blue mana, untap your commander, and then Alaundo just gets to keep drawing you cards, exiling cards, and ticking down the counters of the stuff you have in exile. One interesting thing that we noted was that Alaundo doesn't work like Suspend, right? You don't remove the counter on upkeep because those cards don't have Suspend. If you were to suspend or to exile a card from your hand that has Suspend, the Suspend ability will still trigger even though you didn't actually suspend the card. Another thing is that Suspend is templated in a way where you need to have at least 1 counter on a card that can be removed, because when the last counter is removed, you may cast this card without paying its mana cost. That means if there's 0 counters on it, because Ancestral Vision has 0 mana value, and Alaundo cares about the mana value of a card, that means Ancestral Vision will be stuck in exile forever. Then we talked about Arixmethes. Arixmethes I didn't have much to say about because honestly, it's a bit difficult to approach a 4 mana 12/12 that is actually just a land. The way I thought about Arixmethes is whenever I play against this guy, the thing that he does really well is I want to board wipe, but there is a 1 counter 12/12 land on the opponent's side, which makes board clearing a lot more awkward. So the way I thought about it was, okay, what if you could have a 12/12 on demand, just always around? And the only thing that I wanted to point out, again, we're thinking in terms of a video idea here, is that it works super well with the ferocious and formidable keywords. A lot of commanders do that quite naturally, but a lot of commanders also are susceptible to removal, whereas Arixmethes, much less so. I did have more to say about the next one, Clement the Worrywart. A frog druid, 3 mana 3/3, it has vigilance. And whenever it or another creature you control enters, you get to return up to 1 target creature you control with lesser mana value to its owner's hand. Additionally, frogs you control have tapped for green and blue, but spend this mana only to cast creature spells. Of course, the easy route is to just pair this with the good frogs that exist. And there's a couple of them. Clifftop Lookout, Dowerport Mage, Dreamdew Entrance, maybe even something like Spore Frog, Long River Lurker. Easy inclusions, right? All of them have like ETBs, except for Spore Frog, I guess. So it's quite easy to see how these work together as a package. Of course, they were designed that way. But I don't think you will only play frogs. The next step is to play all of these cards that benefit off of creatures entering the battlefield. Path of Discovery. Whenever a creature enters, explore. Guardian Project. Whenever a creature enters, draw a card. Essence Warden, to a lesser extent. Whenever another creature comes into play, you gain 1 life. All of these, I think it's quite easy to see how they work quite nicely with a commander that makes you bounce your own creatures. Or Warden of the Grove, by the way, also a great card. Whenever another non-token creature enters, endure X. And X is either putting counters on something, on the thing that entered, or creating an XX White Spirit. Next step we took was look at mechanics, and by now there's more than just one, where you can play big creatures that have high mana value, but you don't actually pay their mana cost. The first example that always comes to my mind, because kind of all of them are quite playable, is Evoke. Now there's Fair Evoke, like Muldrifter, where you can either pay a 5 mana 2/2 and draw 2 cards and have a 2/2 flying body, or you play 3, you play the same card, but you need to sacrifice it immediately. There is, of course, the Modern Horizons Pitch Elementals, where instead of paying mana, you exile a card from your hand of the corresponding color. And you can quite easily see how for 0 mana, quote unquote, well, actually, it's not quote unquote, for 0 mana, you get a 3 mana 3/4 that can then bounce, I don't know, let's say your Dowerport Mage or your Hidden Herbalist, which on ETB gives you 2 green mana. Also quite nice. There's more than just the Pitch Elementals. We, in the latest Lowwind sets, got more Evoke Elementals. Of course, just one is in the color combination, but Wistfulness is quite nice. And lastly, of course, Warp also works in a similar way, where you pay an upfront cost for, in Anti-Causal Vestiges case, a 6-drop, but you only pay 4. You could still, even though you only paid 4, return like a Dreamdew Entrance to your hand. And yeah, even get it back into play at end of turn, because Warp, of course, is templated in a way where Anti-Causal Vestige will exile itself end of turn to be cast during a later turn. Throw Salamanders at everyone else. Exactly. I'm going to quickly recap what we did last time, but that's the first one we're going to start with. Doc Orlok, Grizzled Genius, 2 mana 2/3, spells you cast from your graveyard or from exile cost 2 less to cast. We looked at everything that you can cast from your graveyard, which is mostly flashback. There is a legendary creature that gives every instant and sorcery in your graveyard flashback. But also, where is it? Disturb is a mechanic where you cast a card from your graveyard. And then, of course, cards you can cast from exile are cards like Adventures. Adventures you cast for cheap, then the card goes into exile, and the actual card you then cast from exile. Foretell, you pay 2, I believe, yeah, 2 to exile a card, and then for the Foretell cost during a later turn, you can cast that card from exile. Technically, Plot, very similar, but quite different also. You can pay the Plot cost first and then get to cast a card for free. That means, unfortunately, the first line of Doc Orlok doesn't work quite as well. But, of course, Plotting also costs 2 less. That's the second line of text this commander has. So really, Disturb, Flashback, Plot, Foretell are the main mechanics. We found one card that is like perfect for this type of deck, and it's Gaia's Will, a card I kind of forgot existed. It is Yawgmoth's Will, but in green. Suspend 4 for 1 green. Until end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. If a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead. That, of course, means Doc Orlok gives you a 2 discount from everything in your graveyard, or for everything in your graveyard. Next, Edric. I immediately built a deck around Edric. He's so fun in a color combination that everybody just thinks of as Value Town, the color combination. This guy puts an aggressive spin onto it. You still draw a million cards, but yeah, you do get quite frisky with your creatures. 3 mana, 2/2. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. That means your deck is stock full of 1-drops that can't be blocked, or are at least difficult to block. You draw a million cards. Your payoffs are either stuff that cares about you drawing cards, right? Joel Ryle creates 2/2 cats. Or my 2 favorite cards that we found, Beastmaster's Ascension, probably quite well known, 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a quest counter on this. 7 quest counters or more, your creatures get +5/+5. This makes it so your 1/1s become quite deadly quite quickly. And then Druid's Repository, 3 mana. Whenever a creature you control attacks, put a charge counter on this and remove a charge counter. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This card is especially nice because Edric provides all the card advantage that you could possibly want. And then Druid's Repository makes it so you can actually use that card advantage. Crewfix is main Simic one to use in my opinion. So you mean Crewfix, the commander, is like the main Simic commander? I think I included him in the list. We'll see you later down the line. Then S6 Fractal Bloom, instead of token doubling, this guy actually makes it so you create different tokens. The first time you would create 1 or more tokens, instead choose a creature other than Essex and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. That means here we can go all in on creating a bunch of tokens, like Awaken the Woods, where you create 1/1 green forest, dryad, land creature tokens. Or Pest Infestation, an underplayed card in my opinion, where you destroy a bunch of artifacts and or enchantments and create twice X black and green pest creature tokens. The best cards you could be copying, stuff like Craterhoof Behemoth, but let's be honest, if you have one on the battlefield, the game has probably ended. Or my favorite, Tendershoe Dryad, which is a 2/2 for 5 that gives you 1 Sprawling token each upkeep, even your opponent's upkeeps, and as long as you have had 10 or more permanents this game at some point while Tendershoe Dryad was out. The Sprawlings also get +2/+2 for as long as you have the City's Blessing. The idea is, of course, you play your Tendershoe Dryad, you play your Essex, and then the first time you would create a token during your turn, to be fair, not during your opponent's turn, you can copy Tendershoe Dryad, which will give you more Sprawling tokens. Then Eutropia, the twice favorite. It is Enchantress, but you beat people. There's not much I got to say about this because it is so heavily outclassed in a color combination. Only thing that is very nice about her is she gives evasion, so you can play kind of these really dumb enchantments that give +20/+20, or Ancestral Mask. I wanted to showcase one card, 2 mana, 1/2, +1/+1 for each aura attached to it, and you can sacrifice an aura to regenerate it. This, of course, means that most likely in the case of destroy-based removal, you get to keep all the auras and still have it be a 1/1 instead of what usually happens, which is 1 removal spell on your suited up creature is a 4/1. Experiment Kraj, not much to say. It is Go Infinite, the commander. Yeah, it just makes it so it has all activated abilities of each other creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. Taps to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Not much to say about this one. It really is like every infinite combo ever put into one commander. And that brings us to today, where we start off with quite a different profile of a commander that has one of those lines of text that just, you know, they evoke at least a feeling in you. Gora Muldrek. And final law. Wow, I didn't expect that to be so difficult to say. Let's first add one and then move one to the main deck. So, Gora Muldrek, Amphinologist. Wasn't that hard. 3 mana, 3/2. Human Scout. You and permanents you control have protection from salamanders. What? What is that supposed to mean? Well, at the beginning of your end step, each player who controls the fewest creatures creates a 4/3. Excuse me, still a little tired. Blue Salamander Warrior Creature Token. Okay. Well. Where do we start with this? I'd say the first thing I would probably do is I would look back to the other token commanders that we looked at. For example, Estika's Chariot is very nice. It is a 4 mana 4/4 vehicle that creates copies of tokens you control. Easy to see how this is quite nice. Octomancer, also quite nice. At the beginning of each end step, create a token that's a copy of target creature token that entered the battlefield this turn. So even if your opponents get the Salamander, Octomancer will just copy it. It even has an octopus in here, which is, I mean, it's similar in some way, shape, or form, I think. Apart from that, we are creating salamanders and warriors. Can we do anything with that? Each player who controls the fewest creatures creates a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token. What I see here is a commander that doesn't want you to play a whole lot of creatures in your deck. You don't want to be spamming the board. Instead, you want to play like high value creatures. And a card that makes me think of is... oh god. It sees such little play that I forgot its name. It's a 2 mana enchantment in green, where the player with the fewest creatures gets to put the first creature on top of their library into play. So, enchantment. Green mana value 2. And then least creatures. Will I find it like this? No. Alright. Everybody knows what I'm thinking of, right? It's just... even in Vintage Cube, the card is nigh unplayable. Which makes it so I can't remember its name. Maybe it's something like Druid? Apparently not. God. I think I'll recognize the artwork, though. Yes, Oath of the Druids. That's the card I'm thinking of. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses target player who controls more creatures than he or she does, and his or her opponent. And is an opponent. The first player then may reveal cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. If he or she does, that player puts that card onto the battlefield and all other cards revealed this way into their graveyard. Pretty much. if you are not the player that has the most creatures, you get to cheat a creature card from the top of your library into play. Now everybody else is playing dorky little 1 and 2 drops. You, on the other hand, are not doing such foolish things. You only have the biggest, the baddest, the best stuff in your deck. You're playing the Craterhoof Behemoth of this world. You are playing... What else is there? I don't want to go for Eldrazi all the time. What is there? Like, let's look at creatures that we can play. Card type creature. And then just go for mana value descending. It's gonna be a lot of Eldrazi here. Nyxborn Behemoth. Something that reduces its cost is not desirable. I mean, Darksteel Colossus, why not give it a mention? I like Thrusta. Trample Haste, Trample over Planeswalkers, which is not that relevant. To be fair, in Commander, nobody's playing Planeswalkers. I like... Well, you know the song. Like the World Spine Worms of this world. Stuff like this, right? You're cheating into play. Whereas your opponents, you know, they don't build their deck with a card like this in mind. Oath of the Druids, that is. Man, Eldrazi really are quite expensive. Apex Altasaur I quite like. When it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and whenever it is dealt damage, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. That means, you know, it just... It's one of those people that just come into a club or a bar and is just ready to fight. It's just here to beat someone up. And honestly, I get it. In-game, of course, in-game. All of this is just built around Oath of Druids, though. I would much rather we return to the commander a bit more. Sometimes if I don't know what to do, I mean, I am just a deck builder like everyone else is. I like to go to EDA Trick and see what people are trying to get out of their Gore Muldrex, for example. What are the people doing? Aha, okay. Well, something I would not have thought is, of course, stuff that can change the creature type of other things. Unnatural selection, for example. Is an enchantment that got a reprint even. That's very nice. For 1, you choose a creature type other than wall, and then target creature becomes that type until end of turn. Why not wall? Because it used to be the case that walls, by definition, cannot attack. It's curious that this is still on there. Of course, the thinking here is somebody attacks you, you turn the creatures or creature into a wall, and then you have protection from salamanders. Quite easily put. There's more stuff like this. If we look closer, actually, I'm going to move this to the second screen so we have less stuff moving back and forth. Oh, god damn it. Started the counter too late. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like this. For example, what else can we choose? Standardize. Interesting one, because it's an instant, 2 mana, choose a creature type other than legend or wall. Each creature's type becomes that type until end of turn. Ultimately, I think it's quite cute. What I don't see right here is, how is this better than a fog? How is this better than a 2-mana fog? Because green has a bunch of those, right? I'm gonna view details. Choose a creature type. Each creature becomes that type until end of turn. Yeah, here you can choose wall, by the way. I'm not sure why here you can't choose wall. Is that everything? Ooh. Nice. We find some other goodies in the EDA trick here. Artificial evolution. Artificial evolution. My typing gets worse and worse by the day. Unlike the salamander typing, which keeps getting better and better. Standardize. No, sorry. Where is it? Artificial evolution. 1 blue. Instant. Change the text of target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one creature type with another. I mean, it still says legend, can't be legend or wall, but I think, yeah, it still can't be wall. So what this does is, of course, Gore Muldrak makes it so you have protection from salamanders, but artificial evolution can make it so you have protection from elves or whatever, cats, or whichever typo/tribal deck you are facing. This one is interesting because it lasts indefinitely, so you won't ever get your protection from salamanders back. So it might not actually be that good of a card, but, you know. Interesting to me is also that these tokens are kind of goated, right? They exist as 4/3s, but attacking you doesn't really do anything for the most part. I remember a card from the precon, the pirate precon that I got from Ixalan. This guy. It says, for mana 3/3, when it enters, you exile target non-salamander creature. And that creature's controller creates a salamander warrior creature token. You can also, for 6, get it back from your graveyard and attack each opponent once, thus exiling 3 more non-salamander creatures, which is quite nice. I need to move this so I can see chat. Apart from that, what else is there? We can give stuff all creature types, but first I want to look at just Oracle Text Salamander. And maybe we should have done this earlier. But there really isn't anything. Okay. How many salamanders are there as creature types? Salamander. I know a couple. At least one comes to mind. Okay. There's a bunch. Most of them seem quite unplayable, though. Yep. Very, very unplayable. Because one idea we could have approached was giving salamanders to our opponents outside of the triggered ability here. We could just, you know, make use of blue's many ways to give permanents away. Of course, Omo comes to mind. Great precon, super expensive, by the way. And by super expensive, I mean probably like $100, maybe? Omo, interesting commander also. 3 mana, 1/5. When it enters or attacks, put an everything counter on each of up to 1 target land and 1 target creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types. Each non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. So here, in a roundabout way, we can turn A, we can fix our mana base, which is nice, but B, usually you would be targeting your own stuff with Omo, probably. But here, what you can do is target opposing creatures, and thus, again, kind of goad them like you would your salamander tokens. They can't attack you, they can attack everyone else, which is quite nice to be flexible here. Is there more stuff that changes creature types? So become creature type? Is that the new wording? Let's look at a bit of stuff here. I want to go a bit deeper here. Become type. Become creature type. Let's see what there is. Okay, well, I mean, there's stuff that turns things into dinosaurs. You can turn things into pirates, enchantments, into illusions, which is quite a powerful card in the right deck, by the way. Well, choose a creature type other than legend or wall. Target creature's type becomes that type until end of turn. On a 1-drop, the opportunity cost is quite low. So I would say a card like this is probably worth including as just, 1 mana, 1/1, get protection from a creature as long as you have your commander. That's pretty neat. This thing's type, enchanted creature's type, tutor creature, blah blah blah. I mean, it's a bit expensive. I wouldn't play a 6 mana 3/4 that has the same effect as this, even if it's an activated ability. With a couple of Mistform cards that all can become a creature type of your choice, but that's not what we want. What we want is, of course, to target our opponent's stuff. You would turn them into dinosaurs, beast, citizen. We can even turn things into crabs. That might be about it. It's an interesting concept, though. Target creature's type becomes a creature type of your choice until end of turn. Target creature gains flying, or look at 4, put them back in any order. I mean, Trickery Charm seems playable, to say. to say it, to put it lightly. I don't know. No, I want to give it some credit, although it is not the best card. If this card drew a card, if it just cycled, it would be quite good. Okay, so base idea here is you copy stuff. You don't play a lot of creatures. I mean, if you don't play a lot of creatures, right? If you leave out your image crafters, then you can play stuff like Oath of Druids. And I guess that also means you can play like the polymorph package. Polymorph, probably like this. Yep. Right, you could take that route, but that means you don't play Image Crafter or Omo or Octomancer, which seems quite valid. Or you go a more standardized route of you play all of these synergistic creatures that turn stuff into salamanders. I think that's fair. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Grolnok the Omnivore. This one gave me a bit of trouble in preparation because, whoops. For some reason, the image seems to be bugged, so it was difficult to download. Where else are you mentioned? Give you your own type, your own independent, strong commander. Let's see if it's actually strong. Grolnok the Omnivore is a 4 mana 3/3. Gonna remove this one. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. Lastly, you may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. I mean, This one is quite simple, no? It's very straightforward. Whenever a frog you control attacks, you mill. That means you're playing a bunch of frogs that are cheaper than Grolnok, which should be easy because a lot of frogs are quite cheap. Whenever you put a permanent card into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a crow counter on it. Alright, that just means, yes, we mill, and then maybe we mill some more with non-frogs also. And then you may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with crow counters on them. Okay, so the first thing that comes to my mind is we need Doc. Get Doc in here. The frog and the bear, you know, we're not building a children's story, we're building a giga-busted deck, right? This makes it so you cast a lot of stuff from your graveyard, from exile. And this guy makes it so everything is too cheaper to cast. Genuinely one of the best cards in your deck, probably. Then, I mean, we can look at frogs again. Maybe we can give a different frog some shoutouts. Although I do believe I selected the best ones already. Draw then discard, but wait. Technically, oh, we also need to move on, both in live split and the image. You're gonna be playing the good frogs, maybe even the Clement, but I want to give some different frogs a shout out, although most of them are pretty garbage, not gonna lie. Frog Hemoth. 5 mana, 4/4 trample haste. When it deals combat damage to player, exile up to that many target cards from their graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature. Gain 1 life for each non-creature. That's pretty mediocre. And remember, for Grolnok, it comes down on 4. You're playing green, so maybe it comes down on 3. So what you technically want is 1 mana frogs or 2 mana frogs if you skip the turn where you would usually ramp in green. So are there good 1 mana frogs? I mean, you could include stuff like Poison Dart Frog. It's ramp on turn 2 that can then also attack during a later turn. I really like Lily Splash Mentor. There's a bunch of decent frogs, I would say, although there aren't that many good frogs. Which is so sad to say, because the creature type is just so sweet. Bouncing stuff, self-bouncing stuff, super fun. But that is not what we came here to do. We didn't come here to play fair frog-based Magic. At least I didn't come here to play frog-based Magic. Is put it into your graveyard from your library. Well, I mean, that just means we are playing Mesmeric Orb. Right? That means we are playing Altar of the Brood, I believe is the name. Oh, I really dislike that this is the artwork. I have such trouble reading the card. It's not even like I like the artwork. It's just very difficult to read. Oh, a Khan's card. I didn't actually know that. But I guess it makes sense with the snake idol. Right. And here, always the Italian cards. Why, Moxfield? Why? Alright, OG Murden art it is. Both of these cards, whenever a permanent enters under your control. Oh, opponent's bill, get out of here. But Mesmeric Orb, of course, whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller puts the top card of his or her library into her graveyard. And that means Grolnok, Mesmeric Orb, infinite card advantage. Should be quite nice, right? One thing I just realized is Grolnok specifically exiles permanent cards put into your graveyard. Okay, that has 2 components to it. First, let's talk about card leave graveyard. There is a subset of cards that cares about stuff leaving your graveyard. For example, Chalk outline. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Then investigate. Well, investigating is nice. We don't care as... I mean, the detective is also nice, don't get me wrong. Desecrated Tomb is quite the simple card. 3 mana. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat creature token. Also, quite easy to see how this synergizes with our commander. Let's see if we can find more. Oh, the Skimmer makes you draw a card. Also quite nice. What else is there? Murktide Region probably doesn't work quite as well. This one doesn't work. Whenever you want more, put a +1/+1 counter. When it dies, you gain life equal to its power. Excuse me. 1 mana, 1/1 trample. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on this. Since it's one or more, we are not interested. It seems like this will grow too slowly. But I think we found 3 nice cards to showcase here that highlight the fact that stuff leaving your graveyard is something that will happen. The other thing, though, that is interesting to me is what it doesn't exile from your graveyard is non-permanents, aka instants and sorceries. And that means, of course, flashback is a thing. That means, yes, you could be playing Acorn Harvest if you so choose. I think I probably have all the good flashback cards already in the section. Yeah, let's go back. This is useless. All the good cards are already in here because we talked about them during the doc segment. Croaking Counterpart. Kind of perfect, I guess. 5 mana flashback, create a token that's a copy of target non-frog creature, except it's a 1/1 green frog. Not only do you get to copy your opponent's best ETB or attack trigger, whatever, you can also flash it back even if you mill it. Echo of Eons, same principle. You mill it over. Quite nice. Quite nice, honestly. Even Snapcaster Mage could find a home in here. All right. And then I think we have a nice package. Yes, you're going to be playing a bunch of frogs, but let's not pretend that frogs are the best way to mill cards. And then here we have card advantage in the form of exiling stuff from our graveyard. Is this a replacement effect? Wait. Is this a triggered ability? Grog's last ability allows you to play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with a Krog counter on them, regardless of whether they were put by the Grolnok that's currently on the battlefield or an earlier incarnation. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a Krog counter on it. That reads... Yeah, this is a trigger, right? Whenever is a trigger. If it said if a permanent card would be put into your graveyard, then it would be a replacement effect. Okay. So, I think that's a sweet package. Glad we managed to find a good home for Doc Orlok. Also, the Grizzled Genius. It works super nicely with Grolnok. Yep. I'm quite happy with that section. Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty, promises to be a little more simple. Because she reads 5 mana 3/1 Cascade. Well, Cascade is quite nice. When you cast a spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Additionally, spells you cast with converted mana cost 6 or greater have Cascade. Well, we're not gonna get super fancy here, guys. There is a couple of mechanics that make it so you can cast creatures for cheap, even though they have high mana value. So we are going to take a look at mana value greater than 5. And let's first look at, I don't know, is there Evoke? Cards that cost more than this. Alright, you're going to be playing Null Drift in your deck. 7 mana 4/4 when you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. But also you can evoke it for 3. It's Null Drifter, but as an Eldrazi. Of course, you're playing Aether Snipe. 3 mana 4/4 with its evoke cost. When it enters the battlefield, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Yes, you're playing that card. Maybe you're even playing Cloud Thresher. 4 mana evoke 7/7. Heck, you're probably also playing Walker of the Grove, even though it's only a discount of 1. We can also look at cards that have not just evoke, affinity. Of course, we're thinking affinity to artifacts, but that is not the only affinity mechanics in existence. As we can talk about it, but here, for example, Junkwinder has affinity for tokens, right? This guy has affinity to gates. We have affinity for plains. We have affinity for forests now, Sapling Nursery, right? Affinity to forests makes it so this spell will probably cost you 2 mana once you draw it, unless you draw it in the early game. Tangle Golem, 7 mana 5/4, affinity for forests. Easy peasy. Affinity to islands. Easy peasy. All these are like really good inclusions, I would say. And then, wait. Let's first give them the tag that they deserve. I am. Which I'm not going to say exactly what it is. I am could also be my job description. Sapling Nursery, by the way, has a goated artwork. Wait, switch printing. I love this artwork of Sapling Nursery because this guy looks so smug. It is extremely funny to me. Okay. Well, in the end, we are talking about a 5 mana commander here. 5 mana is a lot, and you need to be doing something to get to 5 mana. AKA, you need to ramp. The most natural curve would be 1 mana cards into 3 mana cards. And then, of course, on turn 3, you would have 5 mana. I am not sure if that's the best thing to do here. Because when you're cascading, you kind of want to hit, you know, good stuff. You want to play a lot of probably 5 mana cards? I don't know. One thing that I always look at when I read Cascade is I want to look at is split. This includes a bunch of cards that have a combined mana value. We have the rooms, which are 2 enchantments in 1. We have something like the Aftermath cards, which is 2 spells in 1, right? And when we are looking at these in any other zone than the stack, then we have to look at the combined mana cost. So, commit is 4 mana value, so it wouldn't trigger Emoti. It's too small. But commit to memory is combined mana value 10, so you can't actually cascade into it when you're playing your 6 and 7 and 8 drops. And that is something that we can make good use of. What I like about Commit to Memory, for example, is Commit, not a particularly good card on its own. You cast it, you put target spell or non-land permanent onto its owner's library second from the top, so it's a removal spell, although a bit expensive. Once it's in your graveyard, memory, each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. It kind of becomes a wheel, but a wheel that also cascades if you have your commander. Let's find some good cards, though. The example that I want to point out is that... Let's see if we find something. It is super annoying to look at these room cards, by the way. Here we have combined mana value 4. I want to find a card. Yes. So, stuff like Moldering Gym is perfect. This room has combined mana value 9. But for 3 on turn 3, you can play Moldering Gym. And when you unlock this door, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So it's ramp on turn 3, which is something you want to be doing in a deck that has a 5 mana commander anyways. But the good thing is you can't actually cascade into it. Because Wait Room, which puts +1/+1 counters on target creature, makes it so, yeah, the combined mana value is too high. It gives you a nice early play, but it doesn't break your cascade triggers, is what I'm trying to say. Then, is there more good examples? This is mana value 5. I think Spring to Mind has a similar effect here. Set your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Once it's in your graveyard, you can pay 6 and draw 2 cards, but of course also cascade, because your commander allows you to do that. What also comes to mind is MDFC cards. MDFC. Reason being, let's see. Let's find something that has a really, really, really good effect on the back. I don't want to land on the back. I want something really good. Well, Valky was the best one. Let's see, what do you do? Exile the top X cards of your library, put a study counter on them. Then put a card you own with a study counter on them into your hand. Okay, that's a bit lame. What do we want? I mean, maybe Jadzi is a good example, or maybe... No, you don't cascade into it. So my idea was, if I remember correctly, let's take a look at the Augmenter Pugilist. What a word. I've never heard that word in my life. Oh, it's actually on the cascade effect, probably. I'm going to add it to the list, just so we have it. And then we go back to the deck list. If, and I'm going to confirm this in a second, you cascade. And you cascade into a card that has a front and a backside. It should technically be possible to cast a backside. So, mana value of split cards is determined by the combined mana value. Yes, we've already made use of that. We've made use of that by including room cards and aftermath cards and all of those split cards. If Cascade allows you to cast a split card, you may cast either half but not both halves. Also interesting in case that ever comes up. Right, you exile a bunch of cards. That could be interesting, by the way. We are looking for a paragraph that cares about front and back side. What? There's no actual ruling. Additional cost, blah, blah, blah. Here, I think here it is. Previously, in cases where a card's mana value differed from the resulting spell, such as with some modal phase duel cards, you could cast a spell with higher mana value than the exile cards. Wait. Due to a 2021 rules change to Cascade, not only do you stop exiling cards if you exile a non-land card with lesser mana value than the spell with Cascade, but the resulting spell you cast must also have lesser mana value. Okay, so that means we can use this as a negative example, actually. It used to be the case that if you were to play Emoti, and you cascade into Augmenter Pugilist, that you could cast Echoing Equations. Equation? 5 mana sorcery, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it does is irrelevant. Because this is 3 mana value, and this was the only thing it cared about. But I think it was because of a bad standard where you cascaded into Valky, the 7 mana Planeswalker. They changed this rule. So we can talk about it, that this doesn't work. That's interesting. Apart from that, what else do we want to talk about? What else are people doing with their Emoti deck? It seems like a very strong effect that is just, like, incredible. I mean, honestly, you will still be playing your Kodama's Reaches. It finally shows the good artwork. Because there's no way you're playing a 5 mana commander on turn 5 if you're playing green. I think that would be genuinely irresponsible. We can talk about caring about high CMC. Up the Beanstalk, quite nice. It's a card that saw a lot of play with the elementals. So whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, you draw a card. Card is completely absurd, by the way. We only talked about Affinity, by the way, and Evoke. There's more examples, of course. There is 2 commanders, though. First, I want to include that care about high mana value. First is Galandra, Call of the Wirewood. 3 mana, 1/2. Tap to add green whenever you spend this mana to cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater. Draw a card. And there's another one, a 3 mana commander. Gwenna. So Gwenna is quite similar. Gwenna reads, tap to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of a creature or creature card. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on this card. More importantly, you untap it. Of course, by the way, I forgot to move on. I'm so bad at this. Wait. Where am I? Emoti. Yeah, I kicked Hakba, by the way. Ooh, you finished Rentmaw. Let's go. Glad to have you back, by the way. Yeah, Rentmaw, definitely one of the more interesting ones. I have a tough time brewing around commanders that aren't, like, high combo or even high concept commanders, I would say. But Rentmaw is definitely very interesting. I think I would have probably brewed about Baba Yaga. No, it's of course not Baba Yaga, it's Baba Lysaga, sorry. If I went for the type matters approach. Right now, I'm not sure if you caught what I just talked about. We're talking about Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty, 5 mana, Cascade. Spells you cast that have high mana value also have Cascade. We were talking about different mechanics that cheat on mana value. There is Evoke, of course. There is Affinity, of course. We can talk about 2 more now. thanks to some new tech we got. The first one that has existed for a while now, of course, is Delve. We can just anything, but Dig Through Time is a really good card. And the other one, of course, now is Warp. And it's already in here, but Anti-Causal Vestige is a really, really good card. We can maybe see if we find another good card in here. Yeah, we can talk about Starwinder. It's not the best. We can also talk about Warped Tusker. It's very nice. Oh no, it actually has cycling. Oh, it warped because... Yeah, it warped because it's warped. No, but it's Anti-Causal Vestige we're going to talk about again. Just as an example. And that means we have a bunch of mechanics now that cheat on mana value, which is quite nice. And then also, it's not the worst thing in the world if you play your Sapling Nursery, which has affinity for forests, and then hit an Anti-Causal Vestige because, you know, it's still a 6 mana 7/5 that when it leaves the battlefield, you draw a card. It's also, though, an early play that can put a land into play on turn 4, which might be somehow relevant to you. And I'm not sure if there's much more I want to talk about here. I actually went through and looked for creatures that either brought artifact tokens with them as ETBs or created them when they died. For Starwinder, is it the amount of damage you draw or the number of creatures you connect with? I think it's the damage. Wait. Let's look at the Starwinder. Yeah, you may draw that many cards. So it's not a bad card, don't get me wrong. We can actually talk about it. I think why I pegged it down a little in my brain was I built an Edric deck where every creature is just a one power creature. And so it only draws one card and then it goes away. The Starwinder goes away. But in a deck that goes bigger and better, like, why not play Starwinder? Hello, Philip. Glad to have you. We are, what's like 3 commanders deep? So 6 more to come for today. If everything is going well, I might do more. But for now, let's move on to Inga and Essika. I'm actually going to do the segment first. Inga and Essika is one of those team-up commanders. They often do quite interesting things, in my opinion, because, of course, they combine the effects of 2 different characters. In this case, I have no idea who Inga is. I know who Essika is because she has a chariot. 4 mana 4/4 human god. Creatures you control have vigilance and tap. Add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast, draw a card. I have an emoji deck. Oh, too late. Oh, feel free to like recommend some cards. I always appreciate some intel from people who actually built and play the decks, because what I'm doing is I'm just scratching the surface. I am trying to put out there my first thoughts to get people interested in deck building around a certain commander. But I only spend like what? I spent 25 minutes on Emoti. You probably spend hours upon hours on Emoti. So, if you have some nice tech that you maybe even know works in game, like maybe you even play the deck, you don't just theory craft it, hey, feel free to share. We can always go back to a commander. I'm gonna move on to Inga now, but don't worry. Like if you have some suggestions, we'll go back. Okay, so I know Inga and Essika give your creatures the ability to tap for mana, but actually that is interesting. Elvish Pioneer. Pioneer is a card, right? Okay. Here we can talk about a bit of a difference. Llanowar Elves is your go-to 1 mana green card that taps for mana, which, of course, here is included in the payoff. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, you draw a card. Llanowar Elves is nice because on 1 you get to ramp for 1. Inga and Essica do give all of your creatures the ability to tap for mana, though. So my natural tendency would be to play cards that ramp in a different way, like Elvish Pioneer or Arboreal Grazer. These cards ramp you by putting lands from your hand onto the battlefield. It's still ramp on 1, which is quite nice, but it's potentially ramp twice because later they will benefit from Inga and Essica's first paragraph. So I think that is a nice distinction that we can also point out in the video, is that yes, Llanowar Elves usually is a better card than Arboreal Grazer. In this specific case, though, it might actually not be a strictly better card. What else is there? There's Vigilance. Vigilance, I mean, the obvious use case is you attack main phase 1. Oh, sorry, like main phase 1, you don't do anything. You go to combat, you attack. And then main phase 2, you play all your stuff. Which, what I can point out, if you're thinking of content of a video, is that's just a good play pattern in general. Like, commander plays should do that more often. Which is nice that Inga kind of teaches that to newer players. That's pretty cool. What else is there? It doesn't work with the survivor mechanic. Okay, instead of thinking too hard about the vigilance part, let's move on to a part that I actually have something to say about, and that is whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it. That means, unfortunately, if you tap your Llanowar Elves to get an Arboreal Grazer into play, you won't get to draw a card. What we're looking at is, in my opinion, a curve that doesn't necessarily focus around getting Inga and Essica out as early as possible. I think you're playing a bunch of 1-drops. And I think you're playing a bunch of 3-drops. Right? I think we're playing Gwenna. Maybe. Or maybe, you know, good 3-drops that ramp. Probably. Or good 3-drops that have value. So, similar to the 1-drop slot, here we can talk about the difference between stuff like Gwenna, which taps for mana quite naturally, but that is what you pay for. Or stuff like Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Again, here we can make a split of... Oh, by the way, no tag. The poor women don't have a tag to themselves. Again, here we can talk about the difference of something that lets you play additional lands, which is nice, and can also tap for mana thanks to Inga and Essica, versus something that is designed to tap for mana. What I really like about the Dryad of the Elysian Grove stuff is that, yeah, just like a Boreal Grazer, it serves a different role, and then it gets better by Inga and Essica. And, of course, it draws you a card if you tap your Arboreal Grazer, Elvish Pioneer, and Llanowar Elves. If 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, it might be the case that you're playing this as an elf commander. Unfortunately, quite often, just playing elves, if you care about a bunch of mana, is the best way to go. But I don't want to go that route for a video. I think, yes, if we're thinking Titania, Priest of Titania. Priest of Titania. Of course, your Priest of Titania is quite good because it will tap for 15 mana, and that is 15 mana you can spend on creature spells. But also, like, that's pretty boring. No, why not just play an Elf Commander? It gives you the option to play a blue-green Elf Commander. That's nice, but not good enough for me. I think that's quite boring. Something else I want to talk about is creatures that allow you to spend a certain amount of mana. Oh god. How do we find those creatures? I'm thinking like Hydras, right? Do I know Genesis Hydra? It's like a Genesis wave, probably, right? We can talk about the concept. Here, the idea is... Okay. Excuse me. An X spell is nice because you can put 3 mana in it if you just want to draw a card. If you have a million creatures that tap for mana already, this can be a great payoff. If we're thinking even smaller, or I guess bigger, in certain cases, stuff like Walking Ballista follows a similar structure. You can play this for 4 if you just want to draw a card. Terrible artwork, by the way. Give me the real Walking Ballista. I said the real Walking Ballista. No. So yeah, the idea is quite the same. You need payoffs for having a million of mana. And these creatures also serve nicely if you're just starting out and this is a nice payoff. I was just thinking, Hydras and Oozes. Are Oozes known to have X in their spells? But yeah, Hydras, definitely Hydras. We can take a look at Oozes. I'm less familiar with the Ooze game of it all. First glance, I don't see why Oozes would be that good. But one thing that that just came to mind. Well, we have an enchantment in here that makes it so you can untap a creature. Oh god, it's freed from the realms, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay. Freed from the realms, if we take a look down here. 3 mana, enchant creature, 1 blue, untap enchanted creature. Actually, you can only spend it to cast creature spells. Sorry, let's get rid of this. I'm thinking of stuff like Uraga's Warcaller. Yes. How does this work? Inga and Essica, again, like, modal creatures are quite nice, and there's more modes than just X in the mana cost. There's stuff like Multi-Kicker. You may pay an additional 2 any number of times as you cast a spell. So does this actually... I don't think this would draw a card, unfortunately. Let's read what Multi-Kicker actually does. To determine a spell's total cost, start with the mana cost, and then cost increases. Okay. So it would draw a card. Multi-Kicker is a cost increase, so if you just kick Uraga's Warcaller once, Inga and Essica will draw a card. And in case you're interested what it does, 1 mana, 1/1, enters with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. And then other elf creatures get +1/+1 for each counter on Uraga's Warcaller. I'm gonna take a quick peek at what other people are doing on EDH Rec to see if we're missing something obvious. Or if this is just high value. Oh, one thing I just remembered is there is cards that care about you tapping creatures for mana, no? Leyline? Leyline of Abundance, most likely, since it's a green card. Yeah, of course. Leyline of Abundance has a typical leyline templating where you can put it into play if it's in your opening hand. And whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. I'm not sure if there's more than this, but that's definitely quite interesting. And there's also the other commander, no? Isn't it like a super strong... Maybe he only works with artifacts, because I know everybody pairs him with artifacts. Oh my goodness. What the hell is this? Yeah, so Kinnon. Same effect. Whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. That's pretty nice. And similarly to Kinnon, Inga and Esika also provide card advantage, right? Here you draw cards, here you look at 5 cards, put a non-human creature onto the battlefield. Apart from that, we have X costs. You can just play big creatures, of course. Is there something we're missing? If you have anything you note, like you can think about. I mean, a card that comes to mind because I played with it a bunch in, was it standard? Most likely Hydroid Crisis, right? It's gonna replace Genesis Hydra, I think. So yeah, 2 and X. When you cast this, gain half X and draw half X, round down each time. You can play this on 3 if you just want to draw a card. Later on, it might just draw you 4 to 8 cards, depending on how absurd the board state is. And I believe we're going quite wide, so... we could also play stuff that pays off for going wide, which would just be the card that everybody always puts in every deck that has green, and that is Crater of Behemoth. One thing I thought of, there is an adjacent commander in an adjacent color that I actually want to take a look at. I built a deck. Let's see if I can find it. Around, and I'm not sure if I deleted it. Around Raga Draga. Now, Raga Draga is a red-green commander. Oh god, I probably can't find it. I have too many decks. It's not interesting. I could have sworn it was in here. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. Just so you know, what Raga Draga does is 4 mana, just like Esika. 4/4. Each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. Whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, untap it. And whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast it, untap target creature, it gets +7/+7. So, what Raga Draga does differently is, of course, it forces you quite heavily into the elfish archetype, because all of the elves tap for mana, which, you know, makes sense to pair those with a commander that cares about mana abilities. And instead of giving vigilance, it untaps the creature, which in my opinion is better because you get tap triggers. There's not that many, but there's also no real downside, except for maybe these are triggers that you can counter. I don't know. And at some point they become tapped, so if somebody has a spell that exiles a tapped creature or something, yeah, that also works. And then it pays you off with a very offensive ability instead of card advantage. I still feel your heart. Oh, god damn it, I've been listening to too much Electric Callboy. There still might be some overlap. I guess one of the overlaps is you're playing all of these quote-unquote shitty creatures that are just one-drops in your deck. Um, and you can't spend 3 mana on them. Is it Beast Whisperer? So you should definitely be playing cards like Beast Whisperer. That, let's say you have your Esika out, you play a bunch of cards like Dryad of the Elysian Grove, blah blah blah. You go through your deck because you have a million mana, and then you will hit all of these Llanowar Elves, and you kind of still want them to draw you cards. So play cards like Beast Whisperer, I guess, would be my sentiment. Very interesting to get to know your thinking process. That's good to know. Raga Draga. Yeah, I wish we could pair these two commanders, but unfortunately not. One thing I'm curious about is the multi-kicker thing. Makes me wonder if there's an effect that makes all... Oh my god. Wait a second. Is this the craziest cope I've ever had? And does this work? One of the most complicated cards in Magic. Is this the place to play a proactive Trinisphere? As long as Trinisphere is untapped, each spell that would cost less than 3 mana costs 3 mana. I'm not sure if this is insane. But is this the place to justify a Trinisphere? It would make it so in the late game, your Arboreal Grazers, yes, they cost more mana, but let's say mana is not an issue anymore. Is this the place to play a Trinisphere? My first thought was playing cards that give all of your cards kicker. I don't know if that exists. But Trinisphere came to mind first. And I genuinely think I would play Trinisphere. Because, let's not kid ourselves, it might make your deck a little worse. I mean, and that is up to argumentation, I guess. It's probably not an English expression. But it's gonna mess with your opponents so much more, on average. I really like the idea. And even if it's not gonna end up in any deck, right? Still, the thoughts of my process doing this is I want to turn this into a video at some point. And I think this makes for a nice talking point that people can then think about themselves. But really, my question remains, is there an enchantment that makes it so you can give everything kicker? That would be nice. Like, if you play a creature card, you can instead pay X more. I'm not sure if there is anything I can find quickly, though. We can just see if there's good kicker stuff. Is there other... I mean, everything is kicker. I know that's a joke. But is there other kicker-like mechanics that we should mention here? Oh, and also... Oh, no. In this case, it shouldn't be a creature, I guess. How many cards is there? 88? Yeah, we can scroll through these real quick and see if something comes to mind. All the old cards I pretty much ignore because they might be really good role players, but rarely are they good cards. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. And kicker and multi-kicker, of course. I just want something that gives every creature card in my hand kicker. So maybe we look for creature card. I don't think something like this exists. All right, I mean, sadly not, but Spree. Spree's nice, yeah. But Spree is only additional cost. Mana value of a spell with Spree is determined only by its mana cost. Yeah, that's what I thought. Kicker is counted towards the actual mana cost. But here it says the mana value of a spell with Spree is determined only by its mana cost. So unfortunately, yeah, it doesn't work. It's weird that it works this way. Also, of course, for the sake of Essica, Spree is only stapled onto instants and sorcery. But again, the idea is not to linger too long on stuff like this. I feel like I've spent ages talking about Inga and Essica. I think we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next commander because we have a bunch of stuff to talk about, and even for me, like, it's a personal highlight. Trinisphere is such a weird card. And we can talk about the differences between stuff like Arboreal Grazer versus Land of Boros, which in this case, Arboreal Grazer might be better. Same for Dryad and Gwenna. We can talk about X spells as something that can either draw you a card in a pinch, or is the payoff for all the mana. We talk about Kinnan and Leyline of Abundance as stuff that makes you get more mana. Multi-kicker as something that... But here it says additional cost to cast as you cast a spell. Right, let's reread kicker. To determine a spell's cost, start with the mana cost. Add any cost increases, such as kicker. Okay, no, actually kicker doesn't work. It's the same principle. That's what I thought. For some reason, I caught onto the Spree that it doesn't work, but for kicker, I thought it might work, but the spell's mana value remains unchanged, no matter what the total cost to cast it was. So let's get Uraga out there. Or actually, let's leave him in as an example. But I will have to remember that this doesn't work. But lastly, of course, Trinisphere. Next in line. Taking it into a quite different direction. So we've had a bunch of value now with Grolnok, Emoti, and Inga. So let's add one and move one to the main deck. Ivy, the Gleeful Spell Thief, is a 2-mana 2/1. It has flying, it's a fairy rogue, and whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell. The copy targets Ivy. All right. So, especially in Boros, we've had a bunch of these commanders that copy stuff from others onto themselves. What makes me wary about Ivy is... No, actually... Okay, so first thing that comes to mind is we're going to look at Magecraft. It says cost. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may copy. So, you're casting spells and you're copying spells. Magecraft cares about both of these effects. So let's play a bunch of Magecraft things. Archmage. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. If you cast like a 1-mana spell on on Archmage, you draw a card from Archmage, but you also copy it onto Ivy, you draw another card. Quandrix Apprentice. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, look at the top 3 cards, put a land from among them into your hand, the rest goes somewhere else. Octavia. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, target creature's base power becomes 8/8. Base power and toughness becomes 8/8. All of these, yeah, it is a bit like Feather. I think a closer comparison, though, is something like, oh, you probably mean the other feather. Yeah, or Zada, the Hedron grinder. There's a couple of effects like this. With the difference that it's cheaper, it has evasion. I mean, feather also has evasion. And you also get to profit off of other people casting stuff. Ooh. I think I have a good one down the line, but let's talk about some other stuff first. My idea here is, so it's for combat tricks. Yeah, combat tricks. The first thing when I read a line like this is draw, and then we look at instant or sorcery, and we look at 1 mana cards. 1 mana cards are just the most efficient ones. And of course, there's no instant sorcery, but we are looking for instant or sorcery. Okay, just you target a creature with, oh yeah, also target creature and draw. So this should give us some good results. Yeah. Target creature gains trample until end of turn, draw a card. You're just gonna play that on anything, and your IV is gonna draw you 2 cards. So instead of just being a cantrip that replaces itself, you have a 1 mana card advantage spell. Which, I mean, if we're looking for rates, at instant speed, this is a 3 mana card then, right? 3 mana, instant speed, draw 2 cards. That is the going rate. It's not a good spell, but that is what Wizards thinks drawing 2 cards should cost right now. There's a bunch of these. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. 2 creatures can't be blocked. You draw a card. Sorry, you draw 2 cards. That's quite nice. Creature becomes green, gets +1/+0, draw a card. You get the idea. The idea is, for 1 mana, you get to draw 2 cards. Which is, yeah, genuinely insane. I mean, it's not Ancestral Recall, but it's 2/3 of an Ancestral Recall, and I'll take that any day of the week. IV is an unfortunate 2-letter combination. So we have Magecraft, and we have Instants and Sorceries. Not everything is templated as Magecraft, though. So we could look for cards that just say, whenever cast instant, I guess? Instant. And then one other thing that comes to mind is, there's too many things, but I want to go through them in order. I mean, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card. That card goes straight into your deck. Here, actually, I'm gonna take the bridge to the next thing that I want to talk about. Battlefield Thaumaturge. 2 mana, 2/1. Each instant and sorcery spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each creature it targets. Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this guy, it gains hexproof until end of turn. Heroic is the keyword that I want to talk about. Ivy specifically wants you to target cards other than itself, because it enjoys stealing. If you just give it to her, where's the fun in that? I guess that's the lore, or yeah, the flavor. So heroic is quite the welcome keyword here. And I'm actually gonna look for more heroic cards. There's one that comes to mind that is very good, because heroic, it gives you an extra turn. This guy becomes a copy of something. That's very nice. Permanently, by the way. But yeah, Sage of the Hours. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this guy, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Remove all +1/+1 counters from this guy. For each 5 counters removed this way, take an extra turn. I think it's quite easy to see how this can provide a couple of extra turns. Admittedly, this puts you into a higher bracket almost immediately if you are strict like that. But Triton, Fortune Hunter, easy inclusion even in lower brackets. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this guy, draw a card. I wouldn't go too hard. From what I've found is if you play too many cards that say heroic, that means you can't target them all. They are quite needy, if you will. But I think the idea is clear. First, we added cards that just care about you casting instants and sorceries, which I think is the way to go. And yeah, heroic, you target your Triton Fortune Hunter with oh my god, Viridescent Wisps. You draw a card of the Triton Hunter, then you copy the effect to your Ivy. That means you draw 2 more cards. There is a card. God. Let me see. Let me see if I find it. It's a real gem. It's out there. It's probably not good. Enchantment blue, and I believe it costs 7 mana. Eye of the Storm. Whenever a player plays an instant or sorcery card, remove it from the game. Then, that player copies each instant or sorcery card removed from the game with Eye of the Storm. For each copy, the player may play the copy without paying its mana cost. The idea here is that, right? Read the card again. I made this mistake the first time. This is not for you. This is you sharing, or the table sharing every instant and sorcery. That means you're casting a bunch of spells that draw you cards. And then let's say someone is a pinch. They want to draw a bunch of cards. And then they target a creature with one of your instants and sorceries to draw a card, and then you just get to copy it with Ivy. I'm not sure if this is how it's going to play out, but the idea sounds very fun to me. Dismiss into Dream. Very fun for you, not that fun for your opponents. Each creature your opponents control is an illusion, and illusions, of course, have the ability, when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Now this means you can turn your cantrips, your 1 mana instants that target a creature and draw a card, into removal spells. It is important to note that that will fizzle the original spell, but you still get to draw a card because you get to copy it to Ivy. That's interesting to me. I'm not sure if you have space for 7 mana enchantments into like in your low to the ground, probably low land count deck. Like if we look at the average cost of the cards we put in here so far, it is like 2, 1, 1, 2, 2. This is already really expensive at 5. Octavia kind of only costs 2 mana if you do it right. So I'm not sure if you're playing these 7 mana enchantments, but they're fun, and Commander is all about fun. I get the feeling that I'm missing something obvious here. So let's take a look at the EDH rec page. But also, I can just... Oh, this is actually a fun deck that I want to share. It is my... Oh, that is not a fun deck. My mono blue Voltron deck. It is the commander that fascinated me the most in my mono blue video. And... cast a spell. Yes. Here we find the key to unlock another side of Ivy. So far, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is instants and sorceries that draw cards. But Ivy does not specifically care about instants or sorceries, but instead, she cares about spells. A copy of an aura spell becomes a token. An aura spell, exactly. Blue has so many good auras. And we can use that. You have your Triton Fortune Hunter, and you enchant it with Curiosity. Whenever this deals damage to an opponent, you draw a card. Ivy gets to copy that. That means also all the other auras your opponents play, you get to copy them. Oh, it already has a tag probably, right? Curiosity. Did I not add it? Maybe I need to refresh. I think that is the next step to unlock Ivy's full potential, is playing auras. There is then an interesting split where a lot of this stuff cares about instants and sorceries, and you're also playing auras. I don't think that is necessarily mutually exclusive. I think Archmage is a nice creature to put Curiosity on and copy it to Ivy. And Curiosity will draw you a bunch of cards that will be Viridescent Wisp-like cards. But it's very important to note that, yeah, stuff like Aqueous Form just worked very, very, very nicely in your deck. I'm going to give this a quick look to see if there's more overlap. This deck focuses a lot on auras. But I think the basic idea is clear. I think Stormchaser Drake is perfect. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell you control, draw a card. Perfect. We're targeting it with a bunch of stuff. Yeah. I think there's one more cards like that that also draws you cards when it becomes a target of a spell. Maybe at 3? Maybe I'm missing it right now. Maybe not. Maybe I was thinking of Triton Hunter in my case. Okay. So let me refresh once more. I don't think the cards will show up if I don't. Yes. I knew I was missing something obvious. Sometimes you just have a feeling that there is more to a card. And then, yes, then you realize what you've been missing out on. Volhorst. Bro, reading reading an English comment and then suddenly a German word appears and you try to pronounce it in English way. So I guess I also made myself a Volhorst. Well, it makes 2 of us. Don't worry. Actually, I could probably get rid of delay. Technically. I just need to figure it out. It's probably something I need to change in YouTube, not in OBS. For now, though, I am happy with this list on Ivy. Actually, what I would like to find is, yes, we have all of this cycling stuff, but I want to find really, really powerful stuff. I want stuff... Wait, do you cast a copy? You may copy that spell. You don't actually cast a copy. Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going through the Ediatric list. Vesuvan. Diplomacy. Vesuvan. Alright. So here we have an enchantment that reads, 4 mana, whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary. That seems absurd. That seems insane. You get a non-legendary copy of Ivy, and all of the spells that you're casting, I mean, they still only target one creature. You just copy them to all of your Ivies then. on that note, I guess that means we want more non-legendary copies. So in here we already have Spark Double. And this way, this is build your own ancestral. Spark Double, aka a non-legendary copy of Ivy. Cast Viridescent Wisps on Sage of Hours. Draw one here, draw one here, draw one here. That seems quite powerful, by the way. This looks like we're storming off. Do we want to talk about some storm mechanics? Right, we're drawing 1,000,000 cards. So, do we want to include stuff? Is there good stuff that benefits? Yes, drawing cards, but drawing cards is not everything. We also kind of need mana, I guess. I mean, worst case, we can talk about... Oh god. What's the card called? 4 mana artifact. Gains you a bunch of life. 4... And then it has 50 on it, so there's only one card that will show... What? Not type, Oracle. Come on. I know there's only one card. Aetherflux Reservoir. Maybe you play something like that. Whenever you cast a spell, gain 1 life. Pay 50 life, deal 50 to something. But that might close off this section. I don't think there's much more. So to recap, step 1, if something says cast spell and then copy, think of Magecraft. Next step is to look for cantrips. If something says whenever you target a single creature, think heroic. And then we took a step back and realized, wait a minute, we've been focusing on instants and sorcery super hard. We can also copy auras, which is quite nice. And then, you know, always be open, never be too proud. I know, like, personally, I don't like using EDA trick at the start of my deck building process, but the Hive Mind is by far the best resource. And then we saw... I guess, actually, I took a detour to talk about some shitty 7 mana enchantments that are fun. Commander is about fun. Then we saw Vesuvian Diplomacy. Oh, sorry, I want to say Diplomacy, but Diplomacy, which creates non-legendary copies of Ivy, which seems insanely strong. So stuff like Spark Double becomes maybe the last key you need to make this a successful deck. I'm still not super confident this actually kills people, but maybe that is something where like a really strong pump spell comes into play. I guess that means, wait, we talk about Spark Double and Vesuvian Diplomacy. I always want to say Diplomacy. Helm of the Host is already in here, right? Yeah, Helm of the Host is like the classic example where you create a non-legendary copy of something every combat. And that just seems absurd. Enough absurdity. Actually, I lied. The next commander, I already did an entire stream on because my voice was really not feeling it. So I did a short stream on just Jadzi Oracle of Arcavios, which is certainly a name. Let's move one to the main deck. And let's talk about this beauty, because it's actually 2 cards in one. The front side is an 8 mana 5/5. 8 mana. Wow, is a lot. Activated ability, discard a card, return this creature to its owner's hand. And then Magecraft, hey, we just talked about Magecraft.
Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. God, just trying to explain it already makes my mind go like to shift 2 gears up. Since this is a Strixhaven card, and a lot of these cards have this, it has a backside that is actually a sorcery, which is super interesting. And not only is the fact that it's a sorcery interesting, the effect itself is so incredibly strong. Journey to the Oracle, 4 mana sorcery. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return Journey to the Oracle to its owner's hand. Why is it so interesting? 2 things. Actually, 3 things. First, you get an 8 mana commander, but you have something to do on turn 4. Consistently on turn 4, you have a card that you can cast. It's kind of almost like you have 2 commanders. Now, usually, if your commander has a backside that is a sorcery, you cast it and then you put it back into the command zone and your commander costs 2 more. In the case of Jadzi, it would mean a 10 mana commander that doesn't cheat on mana cost. That is too much. Here you have the option to discard a card and instead return Jadzi to your hand. Lastly, and this was the kicker for me, why I went down the rabbit hole during a stream earlier. Was it this week or last week? I don't actually remember. Wow, my memory. The lands enter untapped, which I genuinely don't understand that decision. I'm happy they did it. I don't understand why the lands enter untapped though. Since I have an entire stream dedicated to this commander, I don't want to go super in-depth here. We are just going to refer to what I already came up with. Where are we going to start? Let's start by saying that the backside of Jadzi is stronger than the front side. A 4 mana card, just in general, needs to do a whole lot less than an 8 mana card. But this 4 mana card does a lot. Putting lands from your hand onto the battlefield is quite good. Putting them into play untapped is insane. There's a few combos that I want to talk about here. The first combo is of 2 cards. I'm going to explain these while I add them to the deck. Sorry, to the other list. Scouting Track is a 2 mana sorcery that makes it so you can pick every single basic land in your deck and stack it atop of your library. Now, a lot of you might know Cultivator Colossus. 7 mana, trample. It's as strong and tough as you have lands. When it enters, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. This means you stack your deck. Next turn, you draw the first basic land. You play Cultivator Colossus, put a land into play, and then draw every single land in your deck and put it into play. Et voila, your deck does not have a single land in it anymore, and you just ramped for 20. There's more than just these 2 cards that synergize. Scouting Track, quite the powerful tool. And there's another card that synergizes quite nicely with it, and that is a blue card that... Where is it? My goodness, too many tags in here. It's a blue 2 mana sorcery that I'm sure I'll find. Yes, no, it's Treasure Hunt. Treasure Hunt, 2 mana, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card, and then put all revealed cards into your hand. That means, technically, you would clear the top of your library from any lands and then draw 1 additional card. If you've previously set up a scouting track, that means, again, you get to draw all of your cards, all of your lands from every single basic land in your deck. And if you build your mana base accordingly, that might be every land in your deck. And then thankfully, in your command zone, you have a spell that can put every land from your hand into the battlefield. Already insanely good. I paired this with a bunch of tutors. You don't need to. The next card I want to talk about is Gush. Gush is an insanely powerful effect that makes it so you can return 2 islands you control to your hand instead of paying its cost, and then you draw 2 cards. Usually setting you back 2 lands would be quite bad, but again, if you do this on turn 4, you just get to draw 2 more cards. Those 2 more cards might be lands, and then you journey to Oracle them into play. We're going to talk about a win con in a second here. Whenever you read something that puts a bunch of lands into play, of course, everybody's thinking landfall. Now, there's cards that say landfall, like Tireless Provisioner. Whenever a land enters, you create a treasure token. Lotus Cobra. Whenever a land enters, gain a mana. Nissa Resurgent. Kind of does the same with some upside. And then Stone Sea the Hierophant. It doesn't say landfall, but it kind of does have landfall. Whenever a land comes into play under your control, untap Stone Sea the Hierophant, and it taps to untap target land. What all of these guys do is, right, let's say you have 4 lands in your hand the turn you play Journey to the Oracle. You play it, you put 4 lands into play, you trigger your Lotus Cobra 4 times. The lands enter untapped, so you already have 4 mana, and then Lotus Cobra gives you 4 more mana. Suddenly, you doubled the amount of mana you gained from the lands you put into play. In this hypothetical scenario, you could discard a card from your hand, and since you have 8 mana, you could play Judzi. There is another card that I put in a different deck that I remembered, and that is Storm Cauldron. Storm Cauldron is a 5 mana artifact. During each player's turn, that player may put an additional land into play. Hey, that's nice. Everybody loves to put extra lands into play. Unfortunately, whenever a land is tapped for mana, return that land to its owner's hand. Usually, this sets back everyone a ton. You play Storm Cauldron on turn 5, maybe you have 5 lands, I don't know, I don't care. Turn 6, you untap, you tap 6 lands, and then you need to return 6 lands to your hand. That would set you back a ton. But thankfully, you can put lands from your hand onto the battlefield untapped. And untapped here is so important, because you can tap them for mana again. And Storm Cauldron will bounce them again. Now, if you have stuff like Stone Cedar, Lotus Cobra, Nissa, Tireless Provisioner, or even like a Tachiova, this will be mana positive forever. Of course, you're discarding a land every turn, or a card every turn. But remember, you don't have to discard a card and return this to your hand. You can also just put it back into the command zone and cast it from the command zone. Now, this is a lot of fiddling. This is a lot of, ooh, you cleared every basic land from the top of your library. So what do we do with it? Well, first of all, if you have a million lands, it's kind of hard to lose. Oh, you're making a bunch of mana and creating a bunch of storm count. What do we do with it? Well, I mean, for one, you could cast a Brain Freeze and win the game. You could cast a Sprouting Vines, which searches your library for a basic land and it has Storm. Although that's not a win con, to be fair. But that's where the genius of this commander comes in. It doesn't just put all of your lands into play. It also casts spells. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, cast or copy an instant or sorcery, pardon me, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. Or if it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. The basic idea that I went for is you create 1,000,000 mana by fiddling with Storm Cauldron and just, making a bunch of mana. You can get rid in a complicated way of all of the lands in your deck with Scouting Trek, Cultivator Colossus, and stuff like this. You could alternatively simply play one of 2 cards. One of them is, where art thou? Mana Severance. Simply search your library for any amount of lands and remove them from the game. And then, the world is your oyster. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, pay 1. And remember, it plays the top card of your library. You could either stack your library in a certain way, or you just go through your entire library because you play a bunch of instants and sorceries, right? We have MDFCs that can be lands or instants and sorceries. These storm cards are very nice because, again, Magecraft, remember, it triggers off of the storm copies as well. And then whatever you want to use as your win con. If you play your entire deck, what I chose, because I love the card so much, is I play a bunch of cards that get rid of my entire mana base, right? All of my basics are either in play, or I just exiled them with Mana Severance. You can play Goblin Charbelcher while stopping you. 4 mana, 3 in tap. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. You can't. You don't have any lands. Then, Goblin Charbelcher deals damage equal to the amount of revealed cards to target player. Could be a creature, but player removal is a bit stronger. This is very nice for 2 reasons. First of all, it's Goblin Charbelcher in a non-red deck. Who expects that? Excuse me. Second of all, in your blue-green deck, you just get to dome someone for, 50. And then, one nice effect that is quite overlooked, because, let's be honest, in 60 card formats, this guy kills. But in multiplayer, this guy only kills one guy, only one opponent, right? But you don't have any lands. You reveal all the cards in your deck. And then the last line of text says, put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order, not random order, in any order. That means you get to stack your entire deck. You get to build your own Doomsday pile in a way. And if that doesn't sound like winning the game immediately, well then I don't know. What if you made a clone deck of her? I'm not sure I understand. You mean like clone Jadzi? In the meantime, I'm going to continue talking a bit more about the basic land plan. You can go with a very strong mana base for Jadzi, but I really believe that this is the place to play an all basic synergy package. And there is more synergy to playing just basics. For example, Early Harvest. I think I showcased that card in a spin-off series. Target player untaps all lands he or she controls. One more thing that you need to realize, and it took me quite a while, is this ability builds a very large stack. Whenever you cast or copy an instant, so you cast and there's a cast trigger, reveal the top card of your library and then either play it for 1 or put it into play if it's a land. Oftentimes you will create a huge stack. And there will be quite good cards, but you don't get to resolve them because always, as a response to casting them, you will need to decide if you want to pay 1, if you want to continue, or you need to stop. So what happens if you combo off is you will put a bunch of very nice and synergistic cards, let's say like a Lotus Cobra, onto the stack, and you would like to resolve that card. You then kind of want cards that can restart the entire process. And here's where I relied on stuff that has either retrace or flashback. So flashback is doubly nice. Either you have it in hand and you get to restart because you have an instant in your hand, but everything can do that. But remember that when casting Journey to the Oracle, oftentimes you will want to discard a card from your hand to return this card to your hand so it doesn't go back to the command zone, right? And flashback is a nice way to make use of that. Similarly, retrace you can cast from your graveyard by discarding a land. So it's almost like flashback with a bit of a caveat. I could talk about this commander for so much longer, but I think like I want to leave something to the viewer. This commander, in my opinion, is the most interesting to build. I will say, as a fair warning, it might not be the most interesting for your opponents to play against. But do we really care about them? This, to me, was the most fun I've had deck building in forever. Because there's so many intricacies. Again, I said, like, once you Charbelcher, you get to build a Doomsday pile. What does that Doomsday pile look? And oftentimes you have, like, a card in your hand that is one part of a combo. And then you kind of need to figure out where do I go with it when you play the card. So yeah, this commander, it really scratched all of the deck building itches I ever had. I am thinking of buying the deck, but I mean, yes, you're storming off, you're fiddling a bunch, but you also get to play so many unique cards. Like, who the hell plays Storm Cauldron? Who the hell plays Sprouting Vines? Who plays Scouting Trek? Who plays Treasure Hunt? And I know that's who plays Early Harvest, right? Who has an all basic mana base? And I know that is like a bit of a hipster sentiment. But hey, where do you get to be a hipster if not in Commander? Like it's the format to showcase your personality, your deck building style, your devotion to certain ideas. And I really think that's beautiful about Commander, so why not make use of it? And then, like, if you have a static play group, I'm sure they'll forgive you if you bust out the Jadzi / Journey to the Oracle deck every once in a while. I think I said I don't want to talk about this commander for all that long. Yeah, we all see how that went. But let's move on. We can't stay here forever. Cassetto. Seems quite outdated by the name alone. I prefer CDO. God, that was a fucking horrible joke. Cassetto Orochi Archmage. 3 mana, 2/2. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. If that creature is a snake, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. All right. We get some heavy pointers here. And the heavy pointer is Commander says snake. Look at snake. I know for a fact there's quite a bit of draft chaff snakes. These are not good enough to be in your Cassetto deck. I'm sorry. A 1 mana, 1/1 Death Touch that you can give unblockable and +2/+2. Congrats. You have a 1 mana 3/3 or a 3 mana 3/3. Still quite abysmal. There's good snakes though. Coiling Oracle is a nice snake. This is a case of, I mean, your commander doesn't really care about a 2 mana 1/1, but it's a good snake. The opportunity cost is very little, and sometimes hitting someone for 3 unblockable will be enough. But I'm thinking of a different breed of snake. I'm thinking of the old Kamigawa snakes. We can take a look at other good cards. I think Hex Drinker maybe is a little underplayed in Commander, although I'm not particularly sure. It's a 1 mana, 2/1 that you can level up. So sorcery speed, you can pay 1 to bump it 1 level. And then 3 3 to 7, it's a 4/4 with protection from instants, and then 8 plus, it has protection from everything. I'm not sure if this is good enough in Commander. Because board wipes are a thing, and you don't want to invest a lot of mana into a 6/6 that then just dies to a board wipe. But the old Kamigawa snakes cared a lot about dealing combat damage. A lot of them seem to care about dealing combat damage to a creature, which is a little weird. But I know for a fact that there's some that care about dealing damage to players. At least I feel certain. Oh man, they all care about damaging creatures. Maybe I'm wrong. Then it's weird that this exists. But you might also not pair this with snakes at all. Here we are at the Orochi, which is the old Kamigawa name for the tribe on Kamigawa there. Okay. Sakiko, Mother of Sama. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, add that much green mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases. And she herself could mean, like, you pay the cost. By the way, of course it... No, technically I moved to Cassetto. Oh, damn. Okay. Anyways, Cassetto should show up top left. Yeah. So, obvious to see, like, okay, we can make things unblockable. That means we gain a bunch of mana. That's very nice. Here, whenever this creature deals damage to a player, the player gets a poison counter. That player gets another poison counter unless they pay 2. Okay. So just infect with extra steps. Whenever a snake you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. You may draw a card. That seems pretty good. Here we have something even more nasty. Whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, that player skips their next untap step. For a 4 mana 2/2, that can get quite dangerous for a lot of people. And then, whenever a warrior deals combat damage to a player, here, to a creature, destroy the creature. A lot of these just care about getting blocked by creatures, which is an interesting dichotomy. Here you get to venture into the dungeon. That's nice. I think we need to take a quick step back and look at the commander again. It's a 3 mana commander that cares about snakes. At least in a roundabout way. What it does more so, in my opinion, is it makes things unblockable. And that doesn't need to be snakes. So let's look at deals combat damage to player. For now, we don't need to look at just creatures, but instead, yeah, I mean, of course we can talk about the ancient dragons. They already come with evasion, but if you get to land a hit with Ancient Silver Dragon because it's unblockable, and then you roll a d20 and draw 11 cards, well, that's pretty good, huh? Whenever this guy deals damage to a player, target instant or sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback. If the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, but if this was saddled, which your commander can or cannot do? Wait. Cassetto is a 2/2, unfortunately. He can't do it alone, but that's still pretty powerful. Flashback cost is 0 if the newt was saddled. I mean, you can talk about stuff like Bite and Thassa and paired with unblockable stuff or Death Touch things. Here we have a payoff whenever something deals damage to a player. If it has a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. Seems okay. I'm looking for more impressive stuff that gets people's mind rolling. This guy is Island Walk. When it deals combat damage, you draw a card. But all of these cards, they don't need Cassetto, right? They already have their evasion. Um... So what we want is like a very, very impressive on-hit trigger, which will most likely be stapled to more expensive creatures, to be fair. So maybe I should focus on more expensive creatures. Put them into your hand. There's a lot of card draw on hit, which is certainly worth talking about. You're gonna hit players. So, and here we have draw that many cards, which is nice. Not all of these might make the video, but for now I'm gonna include them. Now, whenever this deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of this. Interesting, as in that creates a good token, but it's probably a pretty shitty card. It's a 7 mana 7/7. Okay. This guy deals damage, sacrifice, draw 3. That's interesting. I don't want to spend too much time here. I mean, that is pretty insane. Whenever a non-token creature you control deals combat damage to a player, but I'm not going to talk about a Spider-Man card. I'm sorry. This card is a meme, not a Magic card. I mean, yeah, technically stuff like Coma. It's an 8/12. When it deals combat damage to a player, you create 4 3/3 blue serpents. Still not super satisfactory to me since this has trample. I was looking for cards that really get enabled by your commander. But there's nothing that prevents you from just playing good cards. When this guy deals combat damage to a player, choose any number of lands. They become an 8/8. Oh, that's okay. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, add this much green. So it's the effect that we saw on, what's her name? Sakiko? But it puts it onto a creature, which is very, very powerful. Mask of Memory, similarly. Of course, we're thinking of the sword cycle. Which I guess I can scroll down to, and like if we see something on the way that looks super powerful, like we can make a pit stop, talk about them. This guy is quite impressive. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Old Gnawbone. Yeah, those ancient dragons, of course, are very good. But the last thing I want to talk about is the sword cycle. Of course, in my opinion, the best one may be sort of Feast and Famine. So protection from black and green, +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. Bye, Frankenfreund. Thank you for the tip. I didn't know that was enabled. So nice of you. Blue has a lot of cards that can make all cards the same creature type. That is true, and that is a very good reminder. Honestly, this was one of the best decisions I've made in the last years, is moving the research process to the stream, because like it's right in front of you, and you still don't realize sometimes. So swords, yes, and then let's go straight to your point, because earlier you might not have been a part of the stream. We talked about exactly that, and because when you're live, you're thinking about different stuff. That is exactly what we did with stuff like Omo, Queen of Vesuva, or simply put, like Image Crafter, right? Target creature becomes a snake. Unnatural selection can do the same thing. By the way, indefinitely so. Which is even better. And then could run tokens and tutor to make everything a snake. Sure. I don't think you even need to go that far, but that's completely up to you. Yeah. Nice. Thanks for the suggestion. That's exactly what enhances this type. Yeah. So Cassetto, target creature can't be blocked, is still the more powerful thing. But if you want to double down on the +2/+2 if it's a snake, unnatural selection is your best friend. Choose a creature. Target creature becomes a type. Oh, sorry, this is not indefinite, but there is a card that does it indefinitely, so. Yeah. I think there's good reasons to take this into a snake direction. Seshiro, Shisato are both very good payoffs. I mean, this one is good. This one is insane. But really, like, +2/+2 for 2 mana is pretty bad. Let's not kid ourselves. 2 mana makes something unblockable much more powerful. And yeah, that's where all the good on hit effects come into play. Oh, it makes sense that it has the same ability as Sakiko when it's called Markov Sakiko. Okay. I think I don't have much more to say about this, because it seems quite straightforward, right? You make something unblockable, just get things that are very good when they hit people. Which would bring us to the last commander. But thankfully, it's kind of a double feature. Oops, I moved 2. Actually, let's move 1 to the sideboard. Why is that? Because it has an adventure stapled to it. 4 mana, 3/4, human, fairy, detective, flying vigilance. Whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. If you control that permanent, draw a card. For 2 mana, you get to send Kellen on an adventure. Sorcery, investigate. You may play an additional land this turn. Okay, so first of all, what I love about this card at first glance is when you have a 4 mana commander, you do your gosh darndest. Like, you do everything in your power, if you're in green, to play as many 2 mana ramp spells as you possibly could, as you possibly can, because the most natural thing is turn 2, you play your 3 visits, your Nature's Lore, your whatever, to get your commander on turn 3. But Kellen does it himself. Remember, if you play him as the adventure, it doesn't increase his command cost. So this frees up so many spots. I wasn't too excited at first, like at the very first glance, like when I put together this list. But my goodness, like this frees up a million things. Why play Nature's Lore in this deck? Which, by the way, is in every green deck, so upside, everybody knows what it does. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to explain it, but it's also quite boring. But this legitimately, like, let me show you a list that I worked on yesterday. Oh God, where was it? It's the face. Is it here? Oh God. Maybe I can't find it. Oh, it's just not in any folder. Okay, so here I was building around Cadena, 4 mana commander. If we look at my ramp suite, That is 13 cards I dedicated just to get my commander out on turn 3. 13. Kellen does it himself. And that is, yeah, so cool. I mean, of course, he only does it if you actually have a land in hand. But if you play a solid mana base of like 38 to 40 mana, 40 lands, which I know it sounds a lot, but I genuinely believe for a lot of decks that is the correct number to play. I think, yeah, I think you can just skip out on everything here. Like, in the video, I'm going to talk about how you might skip out on Arcane Signet Digital. You don't have to. Nobody's forcing you. But I would try to explore the idea at least. Okay, then let's talk about the actual Kellen. Whenever he attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. This is going to be useful in every game. You're going to destroy Soul Rings. You're going to destroy artifact creatures. We're going to destroy equipments. There's so much to destroy. Everybody plays artifact. Like, legitimately, I think almost every deck ever has at least 1 target for Kellen. And even a target that is desirable for them to have out and about on turn 2, which you can then turn 4 destroy with Kellen. But of course, whenever you destroy an artifact that you control, you get to draw a card. And that means we're thinking of a specific subset of cards. That means we're thinking of, I mean, for the old school commander guys, we're thinking of Solemn Simulacrum. When it enters, you search a library for a basic land. Whoops. And when, let me change the tags here. I think it's funny that you can add the tag unadded creatures. Sorry, untagged creatures. So, Solemn Simulacrum, when it enters, you get to search a library for a basic land. When it dies, you get to draw a card. What's a bit awkward here is it's a 4-drop. Actually, it's not that awkward. So a turn could look like turn 2, you play Tail the Suspect, you play an additional land. Turn 3, you play Kellen. Turn 4, when he's not summoning sick anymore, you play Solemn Simulacrum, you get a basic land, you attack, you kill Solemn. Easy peasy. There's of course more cards like that do this. I need to slow down. I feel like in my videos, I talk so slowly, like legitimately so slowly. Most of my editing is like cutting all of the pauses in half. On stream, I feel like I talk a lot faster. Anyways, stuff like Icar Wellspring, but there's more Wellsprings, I'm sure, right? And Mycosynth Wellspring. Cards, artifacts that cost 2. They do something when they ETB, and they do the same thing when they die. So, in Icar Wellspring's case, you draw a card. In Mycosynth Wellspring's case, you search a library for a basic, put it onto the battlefield. Sorry, put it into your hand. So you trigger these, maybe turn 2 if you want to slow down. Yeah. What I don't like about this, though, actually, now that I think about it, is your optimal curve in every game is play something on turn 1. Potentially something that can search a library for a land. Turn 2, you always play Tail the Suspect. Turn 3, you always play Kellen. So turn 2 and 3 are hopefully fixed. That means stuff like Icar Wellspring and Mycosynth Wellspring are not 2-drops, technically. They more act as if they were a Solemn Simulacrum. So it might actually have been Pharaoh who suggested this. But isn't there the ration card, the new artifact, just 1 mana artifact when it is put into a graveyard? You get to draw a card. Okay, wait. So, card type, artifact. Put into graveyard. And then we see stuff like, well, I don't know. Flight Spell Bomb. Sure, why not talk about the spell bombs? When it's put into a graveyard, you get to draw a card if you pay 1 blue. Shouldn't be too hard. Same here. Horizon Spellbomb. Nice in 2 different ways. First of all, it searches your library for a basic land, which is quite good. But also, same effect, when it's put into a graveyard, you get to draw a card. There's more stuff like this. Implement of Ferocity. When it's put into a graveyard, draw a card. What's nice about all of these is they're 1 mana. So turn 1, you play one of these. Implement of Examination unfortunately costs 3, which is a little awkward, but also not the worst. You can sacrifice it to draw a card and then draw an additional card. If you put it into a graveyard, which is very nice. Library of Leng. I love the artwork. I want to pick one up just to have it. I don't even have a deck. Where was it first printed? Unlimited. It's not that expensive. That's cool. It's very cool. But let's finish this thought. Yeah, Nutrient Block. It's not rations, it's Nutrient Block. Indestructible. When this artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. You just want Kellen to have as much fodder as humanly possible. Scrub Trawler is nice because whenever it or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard, you get to return to your hand target artifact card with less mana value. So, of course, this means that whenever you sacrifice your 2 mana Mycosynth Wellspring, you get to return your 1 mana Horizon Spellbomb to your hand, which is quite a bit of value already. Whenever this or another non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you create a tapped Hearthstone token. That seems absurdly powerful, by the way. If we're thinking of this like an artifact deck, which I think you should. I think you should treat this as my deck is only artifacts and my deck is... Oh. As always, I forgot to move the picture. And my deck is all about, yeah, putting all of these artifacts into my graveyard. We're already at T. I'm a little disappointed that there's not a million things. Ugin's Nexus. If a player would begin an extra turn, if that player skips that turn instead. Very funny already to randomly get some people. But if this would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile it and take an extra turn after this one. I think you can see how this is obviously a very cool effect with your Kellen. Which, of course, you play for 4, which means the next turn, technically, you could play Ugin's Nexus and immediately get an extra turn. Although, what you get with that extra turn is a different story. Here, whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it wasn't sacrificed, you may pay 3 if you do draw a card. Unfortunately, we're sacrificing a bunch of stuff. There's gotta be more stuff. Maybe I worded it too restrictively. Oh, no, I just looked past the chromatic store. What else? Let's go back to the commander and take a good hard look at it again. I mean, the really fascinating part for me is that this guy genuinely frees up your curve so well. To me, the interesting part is not his effect. It is genuinely that he's a 2-mana sorcery that ramps you to 4 and that he himself costs 4. That is so cool. Okay. When it attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. You don't need to destroy anything. That's also nice. If you control that permanent, draw a card. We could try and get extra combats. It's difficult in our color combination. Getting extra turns. Let's look at artifacts that give extra turns. Actually, it's much easier to type with just my left hand, I just realized. Whenever this or another artifact you control enters, you gain this, and then exile it, take an extra turn. Okay. Pendulum. This is just skip extra turns, right? Exile Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. Return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. This to me seems quite good because there's going to be turns where you just storm off in a way. Okay, I have a vision for this deck. It is not the most... How would you say? Oh, my phone died. It is not the most novel idea, but I think it's a good one. First, I want to read Time Sifter. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, each player removes the top card of his or her library from the game. The player who removed the card with the highest converted mana cost takes an extra turn after this one. What the hell? This card is super broken. What? Oh my god, I need to play with this card at some point. Especially in green, there's a lot of top of library manipulation. That's so cool. Anyways. Okay. So, what is my vision for this deck? There's a bunch of artifacts that really like to die. Mirror Retriever comes to mind. I feel like this combo just slots into so many decks that I'm a bit afraid. But I also feel like I haven't showcased it all that much in recent times. Krark Clan Ironworks. So very nice. I say very nice, and this artwork shows up. Let's choose the 5th Dawn one. Very nice artifact. Sacrifice an artifact. Add 2 to your mana pool. Now, of course... Oh, damn. Of course. Kellen specifically, like, only if Kellen destroys an artifact do you actually get to draw a card. But sometimes you're going to have a bunch of artifacts that need sacrificing. And Kellen can, of course, only destroy one of them. Right? So, free sacrifice outlets for artifacts are very important. I believe this probably has the untagged artifacts type. Or tag. So it's very important to have other sacrifice outlets. Oh my god, look at all of these cards that I have to talk about. Holy smokes. All right. So my basic idea is you play a bunch of 1 mana artifacts, as many as you can possibly find, that do something when you sacrifice them or when they are put into a graveyard. Because the idea is 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, in a sense, right? You ramp on turn 2. And then turn 4, you can play your Ichor Wellsprings and whatnot. And then you go into this artifact / graveyard synergy. Artifact dying synergy. I think that is my base idea. I'm going to take a quick peek for the last time today at what Helen Inquisitive Prodigy seems to invoke with the player base. But it seems I am pretty on track. So people are or seem mostly down to go full artifact. I want to read something here. So Kellen destroys an artifact. What happens if the artifact can't be destroyed? You will still draw a card as long as you control the artifact. That is very nice. So Neutron block, kind of perfect. 1 mana indestructible, but there's more indestructible lands. So a land indestructible. Indestructible. Citadel, Darksteel Citadel, and Tanglepool Bridge are both artifact lands that are indestructible that you can target with your Kellen and then draw a card and still get to keep your land, which is quite nice. This is a very, very neat synergy that we have here. Is there something that we can do to incorporate some of the creature types that Kellen has? Now, Kellen is a human. I mean, human is very generic. A fairy and a detective. I think detectives care somewhat about artifacts and investigating. No. I want type detective. It's not too many. Magnifying glass. Let's ignore these. Collecting evidence, of course, yeah, but collecting evidence is not something we want to do too much, I think. You may cast... Oh, Forensic Gadgeteer is perfect. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. Activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less, but it can't be less than 1. There's Kellen, this guy. He's also on our list. He kind of just investigates a bunch. Which is probably, there's probably an easy infinite combo where whenever an artifact enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on something or some, or like, or stuff like that. But all in all, there doesn't seem the strongest connection here. Yes, they make a bunch of clues, but that's technically not what we care about. Is that everything I want to mention? Oh my god, it's so many cards already. Of course, a lot of duplicates. Right? We don't need to talk about all of these. And I should probably clean them up. Like, we talk about the spell bombs, but we can kick the other spell bomb. We talk about Implement of Ferocity. We don't need to talk about Implement of Examination. Nature's Lore and this are kind of samey. Yeah. Okay. maybe that does it for today. I don't have much more to say about Kellen, I think. Huh. Okay. Well, it was a very welcomed surprise because I didn't think much of Kellen when I put him in the list. I was like, okay, the effect on the right side is quite nice, but I didn't consider the fact that he cheats himself out. That this is basically a 3-mana commander. A nice surprise. I'm not gonna recap what we did today. We did a lot, even though we only covered 9 commanders. But as per usual, we did 2.5 hours, and I kind of want to record the Boros video today. My voice is warmed up, although I might not get to record the entire video. So then I can get to editing over the weekend and hopefully get the video out either on Sunday or maybe Monday. Who knows? I want to say thank you to everyone who joined today. It was, again, a lovely experience to have people chatting, to have them active. It just enhances the process so much. But for now, always remember, be kind to yourself and others, and I truly mean that sentence every time I say it. Goodbye.